Okay, we're talking today about something called sous vide, modern method of cooking things. First, I'm going to take a few minutes just to explain to you how it works, for those of you if you're not familiar. And then we have two big topics to talk about. One is if you can kosher it or how you can kosher it, and the second is using it on Shabbos. Okay, so the way it works is like this: in a regular oven, you put your piece of chicken into the oven, you put it on a high temperature, and the heat just keeps on pumping into the chicken and does its thing. It eventually makes it edible. But if you ask a chef or a scientist, they would tell you that really the food is not heating up to 350 degrees, nor is it just getting hotter at every second. Really what's going on is that the heat is having some effect on the meat. Whatever it does, it denatures the proteins, whatever it does to the meat, and eventually that makes it cooked. And the food is considered cooked when it hits some internal temperature. I'll use a number because it's in the AI picture of the sous vide machine. Oh, look at that! It shows it as 145 degrees. So we'll pretend it's that. Okay, now someone's put the screen back on.
I think everything's up.
I think it was power.
It goes power completely? Okay. So I'll just talk to myself. You won't see the screen. Okay. So you won't get to see my... Okay. Anyhow. So, okay, the screen's coming on. So you'll get to see, by the time you need the screen, it'll be back on. Okay. So what happens is when the meat reaches a certain temperature, let's say for our picture, it says 145 degrees. That's for beef. It's considered cooked when it's 145 degrees. The internal temperature of the meat is that temperature. That's the meat is considered cooked. Okay, that's a chef or a scientist will tell you. Okay, and there's all different temperatures.
That's the number.
That's the official USDA number for beef. But a chef won't necessarily tell you that.
So does that not prove that that's Yatzei lettuce?
No, not at all. Because a chef will tell you they can make it rare at 125 degrees or even less than that. Whatever. It's not for today's cheshbon. Okay, it's its own cheshbon. Yeah. Okay, so So what the sous vide does is instead of cooking it with 350 degrees temperature until it gets to the internal temperature of whatever it is, it heats up water to exactly that temperature. In this case, 145 degrees, and it keeps on heating the water and the meat until the internal temperature reaches that amount. Okay, you're trying to get to 145, so it'll do it until it hits. It'll keep on cooking. You tell it how long to cook it for. So. I'm going to show you 1 second more detail, but for now, it's going to heat up the water to that temperature and keep the water at that temperature until internally it gets that temperature. So whereas you could cook a piece of chicken in the oven, let's say in an hour, by this you're only giving it much less heat and other reasons. Mamela, it's going to take 3 hours to cook it. Okay, it takes much longer because you're not putting the same amount of heat into it, even though the end goal is the same. Okay, so. So just for this is the main part of the machine. It's called an immersion circulator. And you'll see why in a second. And that's because what's going on, there's a temperature you set on the top, and you tell it how long you want it to cook for. You say, okay, 3 hours at 145 degrees. So let's say, it heats up the water to 145, and then it starts counting down the 3 hours. And on the bottom the bottom part sticks into the water, has little holes in it. The water can get into there, and there's a heating element inside there. So that heats up the water. Plus, there's a fan on the bottom. It didn't come out in this AI. It's not great. You can see it if you look really carefully. There's a fan on the bottom, and that circulates the water. So what happens is, so here, this is a different AI's animation of what goes on in there. So the meat is sitting in a bag. Okay, it's sitting in a pouch without any air in it, and it's sitting there in the middle of the water, on the bottom of the water, and the water is being circulated. At this temperature, okay, at a very, very specific temperature, okay, it's usually to the 10th of a degree, so it's sitting there and circulating the water all around to make sure that all the water stays at exactly the temperature, so that when the meat will cook at that temperature, it can't get burnt, it can't get overdone, and the flavor stays inside because it's in our pouch.
So I missed that. What's circulating the water?
The fan on the bottom of what they call immersion circulator, okay, which heats up the water and circulates it and keeps things going around. Okay. So again, things take way longer to cook than in a regular oven because you're giving, for the simplest reason is because you're giving the just much less energy into it. Instead of putting 350 degrees, you're putting on 100
and it keeps you at 145 because there's a thermostat?
Right, there's a thermostat that what happens is it doesn't even start counting down until it hits that temperature. And now it says, okay, the water is 145 or 55, whatever number you picked it to be, and then it counts down for however long it took to cook it.
Cycles on and off.
The element goes on and off, correct? And the fan goes continuously.
I just have a question about this whole technology. Isn't water a bad conduit of heat? Like usually used for cooling, not for heating. It's not energy efficient. It's not. It loses heat very fast.
So,
Use water for heating.
What do they use? Oil.
So wait, we didn't. Why don't they put it into oil? Because most people don't have buckets of oil from their house to dump this into.
So much.
But anyhow, I don't know if it's true. Yeah, okay.
Water heat capacity.
So there's a footnote here about conduction and convection, and but we have a lot. We don't have enough time for that. Okay? You can read it afterwards. I'll send it if you want. You can read it afterwards about the conduction and convection. Okay. So the first thing that we think about is and this is going to keep on spinning, so you can enjoy it, keep you busy.
As long as it keeps on cooking, I get something good at the end.
That's right. It's going to keep on cooking. Okay. So the first thing we talk about is can you kasher? So the container that it's in is like any other pot. Okay, you kasher like any pot. Okay, the box, the container, or whatever you keep it, you can put it into pot. You can put it into anything you want to. Okay, and you put it into that container gets kasher like any other pot. Fine.
That's the shell here.
Or for Pesach, or for chametz to Pesach.
Why does it need to get kasher if it's not touching any food?
I skipped that part. Okay. Because bleeds go through. The simple answer is because bleeds go through the defnei hakli, it through the bag into the water and into the walls.
It's not burn out, so
Okay, so I skipped that part. I'll talk to you. Just because we have too much to do today, that's why I skipped that. But in Mitzvah Hashem, you could read better afterwards. Okay, I'm sorry. So there's too much. I'm trying to squeeze it. As is, we're gonna have a hard time. Okay, so the question is like this. So the simple thing you say is, well, this device is built to go into hot water, right? It's not fragile that it can't go into hot water. So the bottom part that goes into the water, the picture is not perfect because there's a part, the bottom part that goes into the water, for sure you can put into boiling water, you could kasher it. And then
what temperature do you need to kasher it at? Boiling? That's
well, we should kasher it boiling. You always try to kasher at roiskin. If not, at least kabbalah kach poltoi. So you think the highest cooking temperatures that you do, and you could do it higher than that. But again, it can handle heat and water. It's built for that. That's what it's meant to go into that. So you can do that. Now
So you immerse that machine, that's
the circulator.
Stick thing, the circulator,
right?
now, boiling water.
So you put in if you look on the machine, the AI didn't make a good picture for this one, but there's a minimum and a maximum of where the water could be at. There's a maximum, there's a top line that the water can go to. So you put that part in. You put above it because water splashes also. I mean, the water's moving around, so above it also. The very top of it, where all the electronics are, I assume you should not put that into the water. Water doesn't get onto that, and that's probably not able to handle a lot of water. I'm sure it can handle a little splashing, but not serious amount of water. So for that part of it, the Hagala part of it seems pretty straightforward. Okay.
Well, what about the top part? You can't kasher. You don't have chamuk tasa and pulling up bleach from the top.
We have exactly chamuk tasa, and you should talk to Yossi about that. We have a chamuk tasa, which is the way the blee went in. The top part, once we've kashered every part that could potentially have.
It's probably not one piece with the bottom.
I'm not sure. It depends on the device.
But still, it's a valid kashering.
But because we say the blee went through chamuk tasa chamkuli, it comes out through chamuk tasa chamkuli also. But Yossi doesn't agree with that. But okay. But now, the bigger question for us is does it make sense to do to Hagolah all together? And that's because sorry, you're losing your picture now. That's because, as you see, this circulator is built with lots of holes in the bottom of it, and it's got a fan spinning on the bottom of it, and all kinds of internal parts to this thing, and that's on purpose because water's got to flow through there in order to get heated up and to be circulated. Okay, so the Rama says we don't kasher things that have small holes where food gets stuck into them. Okay, so is that a stop? Does that mean forget Hagala part we could do, but can we get it ready for Hagala in the first place? So let's think about the different considerations whether that's a chashash. So here's a back and forth. On the one hand, food's in a bag. There's no food out there. Okay, but there's also, of course, there's people. Just because food is in a nice neat bag doesn't mean there's nothing on the outside of the bag. Okay, so it's different back and forth. One is. Maybe there's food was out there, got out on the outside of the bag. Did anything ever get into this circulator? On the one hand, is who knows if it ever got into there. Okay, the Ramah, when he talks about this din that says we're machmir to not kasher things where we can't get little holes cleaned out. He says, but if it's a suffix, you're allowed to. Okay, so on the one, if it's a suffix, you would be allowed to. But on the other hand, over here, the fan, Badafka makes everything get into there, and we have a problem. At least something with small holes. you could try to clean it out. Here, it's almost like impossible. There's no way you could get into there. If something actually was in there, you wouldn't be able to clean it out. Okay, I'm not showing you the bottom, but if you looked, it'd be like it's really hard to believe someone could clean it out. Okay, more things.
What food is in there? Grease, a little greasy and stuff.
Right, well, that's a question. Okay, so you say, nah, come on, what could be? So the grease is going to get stuck. Hard to believe. Okay, then another thing we think about Pesach wise, you say, whoever puts chametz into the sous vide anyhow, it's for meat and fish and chicken. That's what it's for mainly. Okay, so we came up with some ideas of how people could cut chametz cut a knife with chametz.
Only bottle in the water.
Okay, you have one more line to go. Give me a second. I have another slide after this. Okay, so, but come on, and then there's such a thing. I didn't know there's such a thing, but there's such a thing. You could cook a cake in there. It sounds mom's crazy.
Cook a cake.
Bake a cake. That's what I saw. There's such recipes. That's like
After it's baked, before it's baked.
No, you cook it in the machine.
It's a dough.
Yeah, you put it. Whether that's true, yes. I don't know if anybody in the world ever did it, but there's such a thing as recipes. Okay, and then you can put in breaded chicken into. Okay, and then there are the two other things. Then Rebelsky said that the Ramah's chash of little things that you can't catch in the little holes is only for Pesach. The Ramah doesn't say that, but he says it's only for Pesach. Rabbi Schwartz said no. The Ramah is only things that are going to actually have direct food contact. Things that are going to have indirect food contact, the Ramah was not machmir for. And he was only choshish, like if you have a strainer, maybe a little bit of chametz will be left in the thing, and that will fall into your actual food that you can eat on Pesach or during the year. But if it's only something like, in his case, was a dishwasher, even if there be something left behind, it wouldn't get into your food, it would get into your plate, that would have to get into your food. Then he said, Ramah was machmir for that.
But for Pesach, maybe you were very short from well.
He was talking even for Pesach.
Because why would it make a difference? It's us with mashup, so who cares where it ends up? I think over here.
I mean, because you could cook with it. You would cook with it later on. You cook the food. Okay, so maybe you would say that. I'm not sure. But then there's
a pouch that comes with a special pouch. You got to bring your own pouch.
You could do
You
either
use
one.
the pouch?
No. Either you buy an official pouch or you just use a Ziploc bag and take all the air out of it. Either one.
So you might have to catch the pouch if you're using it.
No, they use one-time use. No. The pouches are one-time use. Whichever it is, it's one-time use. You don't use it again. Okay, now the other thing is.
Do we get to vote which team?
No, you don't get to vote. You don't get to vote because I'm about to tell you what the seriously thinks. So then you're stuck with us. But whether you like it or not, no, you could vote when you go home. You could vote. Okay. So then the thing is like this: for year round, he says what could be left in it. Whatever would be left, either that came out of the grease, out of the thing, or what's left in the thing would be bata b'shishim. Okay, so come on, for year round, this sounds very far fetched. That it could be choishes for it. But on the other hand, the chametz of Marsha, I like this graphic I found today.
How become chametz?
What did you say?
It's in an oily bottle. You never become chametz.
What?
The sous vide machine, you never become chametz because it's always bottled.
So no. So again, we're talking about: is there a piece of be'en that floated in? A piece of when you put in your breaded chicken, you got some of that on the outside, and now that breadcrumb got stuck inside the machine. Okay, so chametz on Pesach will be also Masha. You want to make a piece of chicken. What did you say?
I can't believe that ever happened.
Right. So this whole thing seems pretty. That was one of the earlier things. Is that very far fetched? It should be there. But then you have to remember also that Safek Ishamashu actually in almost every case is mutter anyhow. Okay, so it's really hard to see that it should be a concern. Rabbi Rees said for year round it's fine. You can kasher it. Don't worry about that. For Pesach he said we shouldn't kasher. So that's our official position. You can think whatever you want to.
Because we're not kashering based on
because of this chashash. Maybe the Ramah says not to clean up things with little holes in it, and maybe there's something of a little bit into there, and we should be choshish for a marshal Pesach.
That's we have it on our website. Official policy.
Official policy.
It sounds like a chumrah.
Okay, so everyone can vote however they want to. It's a free vote.
It's a mashu.
So all three of you are not wearing ties, but if you wearing a tie and you officially represent the CRC, then
let's say I make this thing before Pesach. So the issue.
No, if you make a Pesach, that's fine. Ismashu is only on Pesach. Only if you're going to use it
so
to cook on Pesach.
You could kasher.
I mean, you could kasher and cook your food, but you want to cook on Cholamoid, you want to cook yourself something to eat, or you want to hear about cooking on Shabbos. That's the chashash. If you use it on Pesach. Ismashu means if you use it on Pesach.
So okay to make Pesach food in it before Pesach.
Yes, I didn't think of it like that, but yes, if you want to make food,
that's a lot. That means you could use it for Pesach basically.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if it's. I think people use it to cook food that they're about to eat, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Okay, now let's move to.
My wife's been cooking the past 2 weeks already.
I know, but I don't think you're a sous vide kind of person if you do that. I'm not talking for regular people. Okay, now let's move to Shabbos. Okay.
Could we really held that sleep for the people who are going to make it for Seder night? They don't want.
Okay, let's go to Shabbos. Okay, so to use it for Shabbos, obviously you can't put food in on Shabbos. You're not allowed to cook on Shabbos, obviously. Okay, the question is, can you put food in before Shabbos? Okay, so you're going to be stuck with this slide because I have no more slides. But I like the graphics about it anyhow. Okay, so for Shabbos there are two shilas to think about. Okay, one is Shehiyah and one is Hatmana. Okay, so the shilah of Shehiyah is like this. Shehiyah means you're not allowed to leave food in from before Shabbos. You're not allowed to put food onto the fire before Shabbos and leave it cooking when Shabbos starts. Okay, so there's three ways to, so to speak, get around Shehiyah. 3 times when Chazal said you're allowed to not be concerned about Shehiyah, and I'm going to go through these 3 things and see if and how they apply to Sous Vide. Okay, the first is Kederech Haisa. If you put in food that's for sure won't be ready to eat on Friday night, but it for sure will be ready by Shabbos morning, so there's no chashash hamiyachata, because why would the guy play around with the fire when it's going to be for sure not ready tonight no matter what I do, and it for sure will be ready tomorrow, so then it would be mutter. So that will help very, very specific cases of Sous Vide. Most of the things of Sous Vide would be ready to eat on Friday night if you raise the temperature. Okay, most of them would be ready. But if you have a thing like there are some roasts that take 24 hours to cook. Okay, so those, if you put them in on Friday morning, there's no way it's going to be ready to eat at night, and for sure it will be ready by the morning. Okay, so there's no big gain by being mechata. But it's the same concept of chaysa, which is that it's impossible to be ready at night. Okay, kederech chaysa is for normal people. Kederech chaysa is the only way to make something that won't be ready tonight but will be ready tomorrow. But over here, there's something it takes 24 hours.
It's not the same thing as Kederech Haisa. We're saying our tomorrow, why we think that just like
conceptually it's the same thing.
It doesn't say you got to put it in a minute before Shehiyah.
It says that once it starts being masel, it's vashal, and it's not Kederech Haisa anymore. Once it gets the outside,
So you put it an hour before Shehiyah, you can't use the head of Kederech Haisa.
right? So
Really?
Before.
No, it's a judgment of is it possible it's going to be ready tonight? If I put it in,
it's a news.
What if the mice is not going to get cooked?
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, next, the next reason why people are allowed to avoid Shehiyah is if something's grufu ketuma. If you either cover the ashes or you cover you pull out the coals or you cover them. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. Well, the way the Shulchan Aruch explains it, either take out the coals or you cover the coals. So, I don't know, 75 years ago there was a shayla, how do we apply that to our stovetops or our ovens? So Rabban Kotler held that the point is that when I make a grufu ketuma, means is when that will stop the person from adjusting the fire, because when he comes to adjust the fire, he's going to see that it was grufu ketuma, or it was actually grufu. It was grufu ketuma, and it's going to stop the guy from doing it. So Rabban held that therefore, if you want to use it on a stovetop, he says it doesn't help to cover the flame in a modern stovetop, because you don't adjust the fire by touching the flame. Okay, what you have to cover is the knobs. Okay, he says it's a nice thing to cover the flame. He says, but that's not grufu ketuma. Grufu ketuma is cover the thing that you could adjust to make it higher or lower. Okay, so what you cover is the knobs. The knobs is the thing that would make it that you can make it higher and lower. You can't make it higher and lower by touching the actual blue flames coming out. So according to him, you have no problem. You can make a grufu ketuma, cover the controls. Okay, on the top there's controls that tells you that you press the button to make it higher and lower. Cover that up, and you're good to go. Okay.
Who quotes a bar this way?
Shimon Eider quotes him as saying that. So he says, so okay, according to him, now, but I think most people don't do that. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think most people do that. They may also cover the knobs, but most people go with where Moshe says, which is the Mishabura is mashma like this also. It has a mashma, it's the same thing, which is the point of grufu ketuma is not that it's going to prevent me from adjusting the fire, or stop me from doing it, but rather I did something to show that I don't want lots of heat over here. I did something to make it not cook as quickly as it could have. I made a show of not cooking so quickly, and therefore by doing that takes away from you see, I'm not a kind of guy who would want to and make the fire higher. Okay, and therefore Moshe says, so the whole point is you have to cover the flames. Covering the knobs, and Moshe said, that doesn't do anything. He says, nice thing also, good idea to cover the knobs if you want to. He said, but the ikar is to cover the flame, to show that I don't want to do fast cooking. If I want to do fast cooking, I wouldn't have put this thing over the flames. So according to Moshe, we would have no choice, nothing to help. We can't put a blech, you can't do something to show that you don't want the temperature. What are you going to do? It's not possible to do that, and covering the controls is not going to do any good. Okay, now Shimon Eider himself actually says, he's sort of like in the middle there, and he says as well if there's no way to do grufu ketuma, like he says, like an urn, he didn't have a sous vide, but like an urn, like an electric urn, he says the whole thing is just one contraption. There's no way to cover it over, like Ramosha said. You can't cover the flame. There's no like in our case, a sous vide, you can't cover it. He says no. You could then in that case you could be samach and cover the naz because he comes from a different angle. He says it's like the Gemara says if it's tach betit, if you seal up the oven where it's not possible to adjust it, there's also no gzeir of shehiyah. Okay, that's a chiddush.
Why is that with him? If you could adjust it.
Because you covered it over. I mean, tach betit. It could mean you couldn't rip off the tach betit. Eventually, you're going to take that off to get the food out.
It needs to be very specific. It needs to be locked up. That's right. Garlic condom doesn't make it tach.
No, he's saying, but if in this case, if you cover the knobs, you cover the controls, it's the same as tach betit. It's the same. Okay, it's a chiddush. Anyhow, so grufa ketuma, according to Rabban, or maybe according to Mishnah, you could get away with it, but according to Moshe, we're not going to be able to. So what we are going to do is, but what we can do is the last one, which is more straightforward, or at least according to the Ramah. The Ramah says we could be samach on the second shita, which says is the gzeira of shehiyah only applies when the food is not very edible at all. But if it's passably edible, then there's no gzeira of shehiyah because you don't have such an incentive. Of course, you would gain if the food was cooked faster, but you don't have so much an incentive to do it. So therefore, we're not chayshish for that thing. Okay? Now, the Bir Halacha says it's really good to be machmir for the first sheet also. So if you're machmir for that, what I'm about to say is not going to help you. But Rama says where the minig is to be samach on the second shita that says that you could, as long as it's kamaych min drusai. So Chazanish says, what does it mean? Half cooked. Okay, the Mishabur says in this case you should follow the shita half cooked for whatever reason. So he says, what does it mean that it's half cooked? So the Chazanish says it all goes. It's a time thing. So if it takes an hour to cook a piece of meat, then if it cooked for half an hour, that's considered cooked. For regular food, I'm not sure how easy it is to judge that, but for the sous vide, it's really easy. Because for the sous vide, you program it. You tell it, cook for 3 hours. Okay, you tell it exactly how you want it to cook for. And it starts counting when the water gets hot, which is what you have to do here. So you say, cook it for 3 hours after the water gets hot. Okay, if you're cooking for 3 hours, then start an hour and a half before Shabbos.
He also said you start at the Yatzilet.
Right. Correct.
The time at the Yatzilet, just mentioning.
That's correct. So over here also,
trying to say is above what temperature is everything.
Well, his question is that if it's possible to cook a sous vide at less than what we think is Yatzilet, but how's that possible? How can you cook? It seems crazy to cook food that.
Rabbi Land is going to start the timer at 165.
No, yes.
No, he's going to time 120.
He's going to start the timer for 1/3 cooked at 165.
So you don't cook it at 165.
That's his problem.
I'm proving that Yatzilet is not 175. That's all.
So then you have to start.
Okay, but I'm saying you're making an assumption that everybody cooks at sous vide over 120 degrees. I'm not sure if that's true because you might have a very low number for Yatzilet, but you may end up with.
You're saying I might force it to go under 120.
Right. Whatever. Okay.
No, because it doesn't cook at 120.
120.
You can't do sous vide at 120. No.
Okay, I'll have to check our recipes.
130, and this health department says like 140.
Don't listen to the health department. I understand. I don't mean you shouldn't listen. I mean is that lots of people don't listen to them. I don't remember having numbers here for how low you can cook it. I don't remember. Okay, so we're moving faster than I thought, which is good. I mean, except you're not hearing all the fun details. Okay, so our last question is, which a lot of people talk about, is what should you do about hatmana?
So what was the psak? The psak was after 1/3.
So if you do it, kamaycha ben jasoy, the Mishnah says do by half. That Mishnah says go half of this, then half cooked, then it's okay. So if my food is good, if I'm going to program it for 3 hours of cooking.
So your stam just being made like the second day in the Ramah.
The Ramah, I said the Ramah says make it. The Bir Halacha says it's good to be machmir. So if you're not according to that what I said is not going to help. But if you don't, the Ramah says that you follow the ikra din, which is a half cooked is good enough. So then program your time. Think about it. It has to be ready. It's going to cook for 4 hours. This thing. So then start 2 hours before Shabbos.
Yeah, then you
covering the thing.
They use put Rabban instead. Also cover the knobs. Also,
I think that a lot of people are not convinced that Rabban really held that covering the knobs works. Meaning he doesn't have a truth about it. Maybe he quotes it from him, but that's not the story. Right? Like it's not.
Rabbi Zucker's passing like that.
Yeah. Why?
Rabbi Zucker holds a crack about putting a you can't do garuf.
But the Rambam says that the reason why you do garuf is to do nasir dasman tashul. You're making less heat come out of the thing.
So you're trying to convince me that Rabban's wrong. Or you're trying to convince me that Rabban didn't say it.
He didn't say it.
So I just assumed that Shimon Eider was a respectable, reliable person, and he said,
it's a impatient voice. Doesn't have a chew about it. And
okay.
I don't know if you heard of him directly either.
I assume he did. I get it. Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Okay, so you could whatever you like. Okay, let's move on to hatmana. Okay, so hatmana is you're not allowed to insulate food, and again because you're not allowed, our concern is before Shabbos you're not allowed to do hatmana b'davar ha'moisef hevel, something that increases heat. So the example for the normal case for us of a davar ha'moisef hevel would be is if I have an urn, the urn gets the food, heats up the water to a certain temperature, and I put a shmata or towels around it. So the towel around it is what insulates it, and the fact that it has a heat source into it, we consider that to be a davar ha'moisef hevel. The hatmana and the davar ha'moisef hevel are two separate things. The heat is the moisef comes from the coil, and the hatmana comes from the towel around it. But we put those together and we say it's hatmana b'davar ha'moisef hevel. Okay, it's actually a case in Shulchan Aruch. But okay, like that. Then we can put those together. The matmin doesn't have to be davar ha'moisef hevel. Okay, so what does it do with us? What does it do with Sous Vide? There's no towels. There's no anything. We're the davar ha'matmin. So the question comes from a Taz. That the Taz says that if you put a bottle of food of liquid into a bucket of water, into a bucket of hot water, he says that's considered hatmana b'davar ha'moisef hevel. It's considered hatmana. Take the word back, myself. That's considered hatmana. Why? Because the water is functioning as the davar hamatmin. It completely surrounds the bottle of water, of liquid in it, and therefore that's considered hatmana. So the question here is the same thing. Should we say that our bag of meat? If we go, let's go back. Since guys go back, more fun to watch this. Okay. Okay. Our bag of meat over here that's sitting here floating in the water is the water the same doing the same hatmana as in the case of the Taz. That's our question.
Why do you need the Taz for the question? It seems to be the same case as the ceiling of Anshe Tveria.
So that's very much where the Taz comes from, and I'm not getting into that complication of that. But yes, it's a similar idea. Okay, so the in order to think about whether the Taz applies over here, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to ask you a question. Okay, and the poskim we're going to talk about, who talk about this related question, they don't ask a question exactly this way. But according to the Taz, if I have a soup, and in my soup is a carrot. So why isn't that hatmana to have carrot in my soup? Carrot is surrounded by the water, so the water is all around the carrot and is being matmed in the carrot. Why is that mutter? So I know you're looking at me funny. That of course that's not hatmana, but I'm asking you the question that way because the way you're going to answer that question, if you're not, I'm not giving you a chance to think. But if you were to stop and think, the way you're going to answer that question will play into whether this is or is not hatmana. Okay, so you can think. You'll see what I'm saying. And the way the person, they don't talk about the carrot. No one ever dreamt that the carrot should be hatmana. They talk about a case about people putting kishka into their chalent. Okay, so people wrap a kishka in foil and leave it in the chalent from before Shabbos. And the question is that hatmana also? Okay, almost everybody, not everybody, almost everybody holds that it's mutter, but they each have their own vibe of how they say why it's mutter. And again, as the way they're going to explain it, and when they would explain the carrot case, will help us understand whether the Sous Vide has this issue. Okay, so one answer is that. The reason why it's okay to put a carrot in or put a kishka into the chalent is because this time transfers, flavor transfers back and forth between the two things. The carrot and the soup are changing flavors, are exchanging flavors with each other, as is the kishka and the chalent. So it's all part of the same cooking. Okay, it's not. In the case of the Taz, the food is in a bottle. Okay, there's no time transferring from the food inside the bottle, the liquid inside the bottle, to the water on the outside. So therefore, they're not considered cooking together. So it's a matmin, as opposed to when I have the kishka inside the chalent, then the kishka there's time transferring back and forth, either because it automatically transfers. Some say you have to poke holes in the foil to make it transfer. But give it whichever way you want to say it, the time is transferring back and forth. So it's just one big pot of food cooking. It's not food being warmed up by a davar hamatmin. Okay. Now, if that's the way you understand it, and that's why it would be mutter to put in the kishka or the carrot. If you think that's why it's mutter, that's not going to work over here, because over here it's in a sealed bag. There's no transfer for sure. There's nothing transferring back and forth. Part of the nothing happening. Okay? The bag is like the case. If you read it this way, it's exactly like the Taz. It's in a container that's closed up, and there's no time transferring back and forth. So then it would be awesome. Okay, according to that understanding. Others say it a little bit differently. It's the same basic idea, but a little bit differently. And they say is because the reason why there's no hatmana to put the kishka in is because there's another case in halachas of hatmana where it says that sometimes the wrapper that's around something is considered, basically we ignore it. We say the reason why the wrapper is there has nothing to do with Hatmana. The wrapper is there is to keep things from getting dirty, things like that. So we ignore wrappers, those kind of wrappers. We pay no attention to them. Okay, they're not there for Hatmana purposes. They're there for some other side purpose, and therefore we could ignore it. And since we could ignore it, so we don't think we say there's no davar matim. There's nothing wrapping around it. What you look at as a wrapper, it's nothing. It's just ignore.
People seem to be addressing the wrapper and not addressing.
I know that. I'm coming to that. I told you yesterday that since you showed me you wrote, I'm safe. I'm good. So I don't have to be afraid of you. That's what I meant to say. Okay. So when he saw the topic yesterday, he told me I got pages of what he had to say. So I'm safe. Don't worry about it. So the people who suggest this, they say is the same thing. This pouch here is just to keep the meat from getting waterlogged, from the time from leaking out. But ignore it. Pretend that there's no pouch over there. Okay, pretend that there's no pouch over there, and therefore everything is fine. Okay, but when you think about that, that doesn't really make any sense. Okay, that doesn't really make any sense. And the reason why it doesn't make any sense is because we can only if ignoring the wrapper will say there's no hatmana, then we're good. Like I told you, in case if it's there just to keep things from getting dirty, we can ignore it and then there's no hatmana. That's because we're going to then say there's nothing happening. In the case of the Taz, if we would somehow be able to ignore the bottle, we wouldn't have a problem. But we can't because, think about in our case. If we ignore the wrapper, say, okay, ignore that there's a plastic there. So what? Do you think the meat and the water are cooking together? Of course not. Of course not. The wrapper is not the davar hamatman. The water is the davar hamatman, and the water and the meat are for sure not together. No, you can't dream that those two things are one big chalent, so to speak, together. One big thing cooking together. Of course not. The meat and the water are very specifically separate from each other. So ignoring the wrapper, pretending that the pouch is not there, doesn't do a bit of good. It doesn't mean anything. Indian hatmana. Okay, it doesn't change anything. It's still meat surrounded by water. That's the davar hamatman. Okay, in the case in Shulchan Aruch, where the person has food on top of a pot and it's wrapped up in something to keep it from getting dirty. If we ignore the wrapper, then there's no hatmana. But over here, if we ignore the wrapper, there's still hatmana. The meat and the water can't possibly be looked at as being one unit, and that they're one thing together. That therefore the water is not being matmanit.
Yeah, food on top of a pot is all together. You're allowed to have one wrapper.
You don't let have any wrappers. No, don't do hatmana with one wrapper. No, you're not allowed to.
I have one wrapper. My wrapper is my kli.
So that's one way of looking at it. That's because it's a kli. But the way these prices say, they don't say it that way. I know where you got that from, but they don't say that. It's not because it's a kli. It's on the tape they say it different. They say the Shulchan Aruch says it's just there to keep animals from getting into it, from getting dirty.
You told me I take a piece of kugel, wrap it in the silver foil, and put it on top of my pot.
I'm telling you why you can do that, but not because that's considered a kli, but because this is what Shulchan Aruch says. He says because it's just there to keep from getting dirty of a chahena, so it's not davar hamatman.
Let's say I have a silver foil and I put my kugel, my silver foil on top of a pot. It's fine. It's not getting dirty. I don't want to get dirty. I want to keep it warmer, so I put a silver foil on top.
Then that's manda. I know where you got that.
I have a pot to cover. That's my pot to cover.
Because I wouldn't do it without anything because it'll get dirty. I wouldn't put it without any wrapping. So once I'm allowed to put a wrapping to keep it from getting dirty, I could put a wrapping that's going to also be matman.
You do both reasons you can have.
This is the reason why I'm allowed to have a cleat, so that it doesn't get dirty.
That's how most people think. I know that he thinks that. Rabbi Zucker thinks otherwise. He says that no, it's like a special heter if it's a kli. That's a special. Let's say
I want to keep my food warmer as I put a cover of the pot on. I don't need it
to keep it from getting dirty. I'm allowed to have a cleat.
That's not my intention. My intention is to keep it warmer, so I keep the cover on.
Then you just don't hatmana. That's hatmana. That's what hatmana is. But you're safe because it's not touching it. It's only us if the davar matman touches it. Just be a few inches away. You cover. You're safe anyhow. But
touching it.
I'll cover doesn't touch the food.
Yeah, don't have to.
Let's just to the top.
Then you got a problem.
There's a little indentation.
Okay. I know that.
You know that because you spoke to me separately, or because
I know because I've heard every language say it.
Okay.
So I know that's where it comes from. But okay, last, and that is like this. In Dain Weiss says the tshuva again. It's about kishka. No one's talking about Sous Vide. They're talking about kishka, and the tshuva the shaila is from Dain Westheim, and Dain Westheim says a reason why he thinks it's mutter. And at the end of the tshuva, Dain Weiss says, yeah, I think you're right. I agree with you what you said, and that is like this. He says the reason why you can put the kishka in is because, just like Yossi was just saying, that when we decide if someone's doing hatmana, for whatever reason, this din, we're allowed to creep into people's minds. And we look at them and we say, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to do hatmana, or are you trying to do something else? If you're trying to do hatmana, it's usher. If you're trying to keep animals out, you want to keep it from getting dirty, it's not hatmana. You did the exact same action. Me and you did the same thing. For me, it's mutter. For you, it's asur. Because I had this in mind and you had that in mind. We creep into your mind and say, what are you trying to do? And that helps us figure out whether it's hatmana or not hatmana. Okay, which is unusual. It's a little bit unusual. Okay, so the in the case of the taz, he says the food that you're putting into there, you're putting in. Or the case of the Aruch Shulchan, the way he says it, you have a cooked food and you're putting it into here. Why are you putting it into the hot water? Okay, in the ceiling. Why are you putting it into Why are you putting it into the water? You're putting it in because you want to heat it up. Okay, that's hatmana. Okay, you're making something hotter, but davar ma'asav hevel. That's what you're not allowed to do. He says, but the kishka is raw. Okay, you're putting the kishka raw into there. So why are you putting it into here? It's true you want to get it hot, but really what you're doing is you're trying to cook it. Why is the meat in the sous vide? Because you're trying to cook it. He says, cooking is not hatmana. Hatmana is when you do something, you have something that's there and you want to make it hotter or you want to keep it hot. If it's on Shabbos or before Shabbos, you want to make it hot. He says, but if you want to cook something, cooking is not asur, hatmana is asur.
This is hatmana on a raw item. That's what you're saying.
Right. It's not it's not that it's no hatmana, it's that if you're in the process of cooking the food, if that's what you're trying to do, then you're cooking.
You're trying to say that there is a problem with hatmana by kiddur chaysa. So according to this shouldn't be a problem because you're cooking.
I don't know about that. That I didn't see in your notes. Sorry, I didn't. If I would have seen that, then I would have prepared to think. Why am I?
He's saying you're allowed to wrap a pot that's raw food. That's not cooked yet.
Right? If it's part of cooking, if that's what you're trying to do to cook it, then he says okay. Because
I want to have a better insulated pot. Some heat is escaping, so I better insulated by wrapping it.
So again, we have to think about it. You put it onto the fire to cook. You put it on the fire to cook. Why did you wrap it? You wrapped it because that's going to help on the cooking. In his mind, so that's fine. You're just cooking.
Why is heating up water not cooking?
What did you say?
Heating up water is not cooking.
Heating up water. So you mean it's a technicality of it? Excuse me. In din, that's considered cooking. Bishop, I don't think it makes a difference what the din is. Because what you're trying to do. What are you doing? Are you cooking or are you heating up? For regular people say they're heating up the water.
If in din, heating up water is cooking, so then you're cooking.
Okay.
Cooking.
I don't think it goes like that. I don't think it goes. I don't think it goes like that.
Who's true is this?
So the tshuva is printed in Mechas Yitzchak, but really the bulk of it is from Dayan Westheim, who says this is what I think is why it's the reason why it should be mutter. And then
sous vide?
No, he's talking about kishka in the child.
Okay.
Kishka in the child, and then he says this is why I think it's mutter. Dayan Weiss says some things about whatever, and then comes in and says, but I think what you said, your point that you made about this thing is correct. We should look at his cooking. So according to that, then it would be mutter to do it here in the sous vide because it's the same thing. The guy's obviously trying to cook over here, so there's no time transferring, and there's not. It doesn't help that we ignore the plastic wrapper around it. But if we look at it and say, Lamaisi he's trying to cook, which of course he is. Of course that's what he's doing. He's cooking, and the water is not there as a davar hamat, and the water is the davar mavashal. So he would say, okay, you don't have to rise. You don't. Lots of things you guys didn't agree with today. But anyhow, that's what he had to say for himself.